Thank you so much for inviting me. You can hear me okay? Yes, okay. Yes, I've been active in the fight for immigrant rights for many years, but I think the landscape for this fight is now really changing, and that presents both challenges as well as new openings for us. As you all know, following the Trump election, and especially, I think, after the separation of parents from their children and at the border last spring, a much wider range of people have been introduced to the immigrant detention system in this country, and they have been rightfully outraged and horrified by what the government is doing, including separating family members and holding them in jail, months without charges, months for applying for asylum, and sometimes years while they go through court hearings to establish their basis to remain in this country. And just like all human rights violations that are carried out systematically on a mass scale, mass incarceration of immigrants requires the collaboration of local levels of government and institutions to enable it to occur. The reality is, as bad as ICE is, and as much money as it has to spend, it is not able to make mass arrests and hold people on a mass scale without the assistance and the infrastructure of local governments. And for years, at least since the early 2000s on, these local governments have done that, collaborated with ICE to assist in the arrest and detention of people from their own communities. It is this collaboration that makes it possible to deport over 300,000 people every year. Now, you may ask, why would local communities collaborate with ICE? Communities which may even be overwhelmingly immigrant, such as we have where I live in New Jersey, and is true here too. Well, in the case of detention centers, it is because there is a lot of money to be made. Across the country, local jails enter into bed contracts with ICE to hold immigrant detainees while they await court hearings. In the case of New Jersey, Hudson County, which some of you know where Jersey City is, that's Hudson County, rakes in some $35 million per year, while Essex County, where Newark is, makes over $36 million per year. And Bergen County, another northern county, makes a few million more. In New Jersey, these contracts are signed by locally elected government representatives, almost all of whom are Democrats in New Jersey, who have publicly claimed to oppose Trump's policies. And by the way, nearly everyone that is held in Hudson and Bergen County jails are brought in from New York, or they are asylum seekers from the border, from Texas, Arizona, whatever. Now, these bed contracts have existed for years, decades, I mean, a long time. They are now built into local budgets. When you take your child to the local park, you have to wonder whether it was paid for by holding immigrants in detention. They are not temporary money flows, but now they are structurally part of local budgets, making local communities dependent on ICE and continued detentions. And they're growing. You can imagine in this environment. In New Jersey, these local jails now house thousands of people each year, of which the majority are ultimately deported. New Jersey recently passed bail reform, which is a good thing. It was to set up so that people can get released rather than sit in jail if you don't have the money, that you'd actually get released. So that was the bail reform was a hope of reducing mass incarceration. But instead, some of the jails are now replacing their inmates with more immigrant detainees, which are much more lucrative than your regular prison population because they get money from the federal government for it. And as the space grows, more are detained. So last fall, a new campaign did begin in New Jersey to pressure local Democratic politicians to break from ICE and end the contracts. As a result, some of you may have seen WNYC and other press extensively covered the campaign and the public meetings that were held with officials, forcing the politicians' complicity out into the open. This enabled for the first time the extent of the number of people separated from their families, not separated in Texas, which they are, of course, but here in New Jersey and New York began to be exposed. Hudson County now has 700 beds for ICE detainees. Essex County has 800 in Newark. Elizabeth has 300. And Bergen County has another 200. And there is turnover all the time. So in the course of a year, well over 5,000 people have spent time there on immigration charges all the time. And many of these are also, as I said, they're from New York, a good portion. What has also been exposed in the process of doing this are the conditions in the jails. Just this past year, 6 people died in Hudson County Jail. I was at a meeting of the Hudson County Freeholders, which is the government body there, just last week, where several very brave recent detainees who now live in New York City is my understanding, they came and they publicly spoke on the conditions in the Hudson County Jail and on the abuse of gay and trans immigrants in Hudson, including one who reported publicly at that meeting that he had been raped twice just over the course of last summer in that jail. At this point, the Hudson County Freeholders voted and say that they will work to phase out the contract by 2020, but they are still leaving open the possibility or their right to extend the contract if they can't find replacement funding elsewhere. Now, what is going on in New Jersey is also happening across the country. I think we have to keep that in mind. As local ICE detention contracts see the light of day, people are campaigning against them and winning in many places. Atlanta just ended theirs. Other places are Williamson County, which is actually a conservative county outside of Austin, Texas, Alexandria, Virginia, and Fairfax, Virginia, Elkhart County, Indiana, Springfield, Oregon, and several places in California have also ended their contracts. Elsewhere, people are organizing in other ways. They're organizing against the building of private detention centers, and they're in places like Wyoming and in Houston. And Philadelphia, they just shut down their data sharing contract with ICE. So I think it's important to see how we are actually part of a bigger movement which can call for the end of collaboration with ICE on every level and the release of all detainees now. Ultimately, we must win a legal protected status for immigrants. But in the meantime, we cannot stand by and allow the rationalization of massive human rights violations to continue hidden from the general public. Thank you.